Hey, what's up, guys? This is Brian J's Nerd Talk. I'm signing on, and this is my review of Jodorowsky's Dune, which I got from Amazon Prime. I ordered it, I bought it. Everyone told me it's a great documentary about the Dune movie that never got made and never got released. And I gotta tell you, this is a really, really great documentary. Jodorowsky is a genius. He is a surrealist filmmaker, an artistic filmmaker that had such a great mind for cinema, and he viewed cinema more than just a business and a money making machine. He viewed it as art, as an artistic medium to make high art. And this movie could have been great. I mean, this could have been a great film. It's probably the most influential film to never get made. You see variations of this film in so many other science fiction movies like Alien, because the team of designers and artists and visual effects people that were working on this movie that never got made ended up making Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, and they won Oscars for Ridley Scott's Alien. And Alien is one of the most, if not the most influential science fiction horror movie of the last 44 years. Because that movie came out in 1979. They influenced Blade Runner. They did designs and influenced. It did Indiana Jones, Star Wars. There were so many moments in Star Wars that were borrowed from the storyboards that were done here for this movie that never got made. Blade Runner, Flash Gordon, Prometheus. The list goes on and on, and if it wasn't for the success or the influence of a lot of the science fiction movies, you probably wouldn't have gotten Babylon 5 and so many successful science fiction shows in the 90s. Like, Babylon 5 is J. Michael Straczynski's child. That's his brain. That's his creation. He came up with so much, but if it wasn't for the success of a lot of these science fiction movies, I mean, science fiction TV probably wouldn't have been what it was in the 90s, where, before Blade Runner, before the Star Trek shows, every science fiction show had like 3 seasons or less. And then TNG had 7 seasons, Deep Space Nine had 7 seasons, Voyager 7 seasons, Babylon 5 seasons. There were 2 Gene Roddenberry shows that were created after he died in the 90s and in the early 2000s that had 5 seasons. So, genre television was great in the 90s. Science fiction movies were doing really well. But science fiction movies are not always consistently big hits. And this movie would have cost like $15 million. And there was a fear that the movie would have gone over budget to $25 or $30 million. And Hollywood had that fear, and they had the right to have that fear. And so they chose not to make it. But even though this movie could have been great, it could have been a great looking movie. It probably would have been the most influential science fiction movie next to 2001 Space Odyssey from the 70s. I have to admit, as a huge fan of Dune, because I just got done reading the book this week and I love it so much, Jodorowsky's Dune, Jodorowsky's, I think that's how you say his name. If I'm saying his name wrong, I'm so sorry. I have to say his Dune would have been a terrible adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune. It was not going to be faithful to the book at all. Duke Leto Atreides was going to be castrated, and then Jessica was going to get pregnant by taking some of his blood, turning it into semen, putting it inside of herself, and she was going to give birth to Paul, who was going to become the Messiah, and then he was going to be killed, and then everyone's going to be inspired and say they want to be Paul, and they're going to take down the Harkonnens and turn Dune into an Earth-like planet that will live on forever. I mean, it's just a terrible ending, just a terrible adaptation, not faithful to the book at all, making so many changes that would have pissed off Dune fans, but it would have been a great movie. It would have been one of those instances where it would have been a great work of art, but a terrible adaptation of Dune. Like, I love Game of Thrones. It's a really good show. The last season was a disappointment. It was bad, but I still love that show. But as an adaptation of the books, it was not good at all. Or House of the Dragon. I love House of the Dragon. The first season was great, but it was not a great adaptation. It was a really good adaptation. It had some great moments, but it's more of a great show than a great adaptation or even a great inspiration. It was just a really good inspiration. Hopefully season 2 and 3 will be better. But yeah, this movie, it would have been great. It would have looked great, but as an adaptation of Dune, it probably would have been the worst adaptation of the 20th century of any book. But, maybe someday this movie will be made. I mean, the director, Jodo, he created the Uncall graphic novel and another graphic novel that was based on his story and his designs and his visuals that he was going to put into this movie. So in the end, he got to make his vision. He got to make it and put it in comic book form. And he said when he dies or whatever, somebody else could get it made or somebody else can make it in his lifetime. We never know. But yeah, these are my thoughts. Great potential movie, terrible adaptation. And overall, this is a great documentary. I love it. I give this documentary a 9.5 out of 10. This is a fantastic documentary and one of the best films in the 2010s. And these are my thoughts. And this is Brian J's Nerd Talk. I'll talk to y'all later.